Hey there! You might have noticed that I like to keep track of all the latest bizarre insults that internet weirdos like to come up with. You know, cultural Marxist, baiter, cuck, virtue signaler, all the greats. One of the latest additions to that list is the term soy boy, which is used to decree everyone who's not like them as degenerate, feminized, weak losers who are also, for some reason, also leftists because of soy. So come. And for once, I hesitate to admit they've scored a slam dunk. They re-onto us. They know that beans are the reason why leftists think what they believe. It can't be because of all the evidence. No, they've got us. And you can't prove otherwise because that's just the objective truth. At least that's they think. Here's a comment from one of my latest videos. Go get your chocolates and wine, and cry in the bathtub, you silly cucks. High soy dates spike estrogen and lower testosterone. That's not a disputable fact. So, let's dispute the facts. The theory that soy is bad for you stems from a certain superstition in the bodybuilding community. Here's the YouTube channel of Elliot Hulse, a professional bodybuilder with 1.7 million subscribers. Your entire body is your brain. Well, this guy knows what he's talking about. I wonder what he thinks about soy. Soy protein makes you weak and womanly. Almost every bit of soy in the United States, or in the West, is going to be genetically modified. Now, I'm not saying pro or con for genetically modified foods, but it's fucking weird. It sounds like freakish and Frankenstein-ish to me. I don't know the end result. It might be the greatest thing that's ever happened to humankind. I don't fucking know. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't like it, but I can't tell you the truth. You gotta figure it out yourself. You will figure it out yourself. Oh God, That's a great idea, Elliot. I'd have never thought of that. Thanks a lot. So, where's your evidence that soy feminizes people? I would offer you to pick up a book called The Whole Soy Truth by Kayla Daniels. Oh, it's actually called The Whole Soy Story, Elliot, but let's not get hung up on that. This book is authored by professional nutritional iconoclast Dr. Kayla Daniel, the naughty nutritionist telling the truth that's too hot to handle. I believe that's code for me work isn't peer-reviewed. She used to call herself the naughty survivalist, but she eventually changed her name and wardrobe after realizing her target audience were having trouble finding her in that camo jacket amongst all the dense foliage in her beige living room. She outlined some of her main claims about soy in her video entitled Moobs, Man Boobs and Other Environmental Estrogens. All of those soybeans contain phytoestrogens. That's plant estrogens, and they are a form of estrogenizing influence on the body. They create hormonal havoc. They create endocrine disruption. Soy contains phytoestrogens, which are obviously feminizing, because they re the plant version of estrogen, resulting in lowered testosterone along with stuff like man boobs or being turned into a weak-willed feminist who definitely dozed Teven lift. Now, Dr. Daniels' description doesn't list any sources for this, and the rational skeptic thing to do in this context would obviously be to just assume that means there aren't any without checking. So, alas, it seems that I'm not a true skeptic yet. I'm just a mere mortal, because I went and checked anyway, and I did find some studies, but how do I put this in a way that makes it not sound rude? The studies didn't say anything like what this lying Lear lied about. For example, while trying to find studies on the effects of soy intake on estrogen and testosterone levels, I found a paper which assessed all English language studies there had been as of 2008 in which men consumed soy and their testosterone was tested, which at the time was 32. Check out the link in the description. The paper pretty definitively suggests that soy foods and the phytoestrogens in them thereof do not alter the testosterone concentration in men. Bear in mind, this was just one study. This was a meta-analysis of the results of all 32 other studies there had been at the time. Now, does that mean we can therefore conclude that soy has no effect on testosterone levels? Not quite. You see, in science, it's rarely productive to be that conclusive about something. Instead, we'll say that the evidence quite reliably suggests that that's the case. But what about soy's effects on other things that men like to worry about a lot? Like, sperm count. Well, another paper from 2010, examining the 9 clinical studies into the effects of isoflavone exposure on estrogen levels, found no evidence that it affects those levels at all, which suggests their snow link. Now, at this point in my research, I was wondering, why are phytoestrogens even called estrogens when taking them doesn't seem to affect the levels of estrogen or testosterone in your blood? Well, it's because in terms of chemical structure, they are very similar. Here's a picture I found on Wikipedia comparing the makeup of isoflavones and cumastins to estradiol, the major estrogen hormone. Their construction is very similar, but the actual chemical components are very different. This means they do bind with estrogen receptors, but the effects are very different because, to put it scientifically, they are made of different stuff. This means that they don't really have comparable effects. But who cares about that? Kayla Daniel is fighting back with rigorously researched, anecdotes. Like this one. Scientists first linked phytoestrogens with lowered sperm count and other reproductive problems in the 1940s when they diagnosed clover disease in sheep. Dr. Daniel is so strapped for actual compelling evidence that she's down to studies from the 40s looking at the effects of a different plant on sheep. Now, I never really paid that much attention in biology class. I am really sorry, Mrs. Baldwin. But I'm pretty sure I distantly remember that humans are monogastric mammals, which means that we have one stomach that digests everything we eat. Whereas some animals, for example sheep, are ruminants, which means they have a four-chambered stomach that digests things multiple times, and they also regurgitate food so that they can chew it again and swallow it again. It's a little bit disgusting, but that's just how some animals digest things. This is why sheep can eat grass, but humans can't. Well, you can. No one's stopping you. There's no laws. I'll just try and stop me, Brussels. Ah. Grass contains silica, which can seriously mess up your teeth, like permanently. Do not even do this for a joke. So, given the quite large dietary, digestive, and metabolic differences between humans and sheep, I think it's fair to say that maybe a study about how male sheep digested red clover and the effect that had on them might not be fully relevant to the effects of soy isoflavones on humans. So, to sum up, some plants make a hormone that looks like estrogen in composition, but doesn't have the same effects because it's actually a very different chemical. However, some people who don't know that and can't be bothered to check saw the word estrogen and leaped to conclusions that it must be feminizing the same way estrogen is. The way science classifies and names chemicals has effectively tricked a bunch of people who don't know better into making wild assumptions when the data shows otherwise, which sucks, but you've got to name things somehow. You know, it's important that you have a standardized system of classification, and the one they picked happens to cause massive problems for bodybuilders. I bet Johnny Science Namer didn't see that coming. My apologies to the descendants of Antoine Lavoisier. I'm reminded almost immediately of the equally fox scientific alpha-beta beliefs popular among the manosphere pickup artists and others, originally based on a study of wolves that was later found through future research by its own author to not even be accurate to wolves. These same kinds of folks have happily combined these two half-baked concepts. Hence the use of terms like lot beta and the insistence that soy must have something to do with it because that's what they all eat, apparently. And I think I saw a word with estrogen in it somewhere. I rest me case on the edge of a cliff. Oh no, the case has fallen off. Oh no, it's on fire. Soy and its supposed effects was eventually picked up by the closest thing the far right has to journalism, rebellion media, and then later Infowars. Incidentally, Infowars sells diet supplements containing soy on their website. Probably should have checked the label there, shouldn't you, Paul? Should the label le pick should you should I take brain force. Which brings us to Infowars editor, soy hater, and soy salesman Paul Joseph Watson's video on the topic, which we're going to look at in more detail now because I think it all be quite useful to do so. And also funny. The video begins with a spiel about the BuzzFeed Tree Guys. You've probably seen the BuzzFeed Tree Guys video where they measure their testosterone and it's literally half or less the normal level for a man. Their testosterone is so low, it's below the average for an 85 to 100-year-old man. This claim, and in fact this exact table, has appeared all over the rogues gallery of right-wing and manosphere websites. Infowars has it, of course, but there's also Return of Kings, Daily Wire, Alt-Right.com, Reddit, Return of Kings again. So it's like a game? You guys are writing the same thing. Gosh, they really proud of this one and its founder, Rush V's Internet Forum. These articles and Paul's video are full of speculation that this testosterone level is completely unhealthy and terrible and bad for you. But is it? I'm not really sure I see the validity in looking at one number and saying, aha, these guys are dangerously unhealthy because of a graph Googled of averages. Human biology is rarely so simple. Trying to stick as close as you can to a number you found on the net can be incredibly damaging. In 2010, on a forum for discussing supplements, a guy had a test and found he had a level of 212. Again, the exact same level as supposedly. But then, half a month later, it went up to 364, suggesting these numbers are a temporary fluctuation that's fairly normal in a 25-year-old male. Despite this, anonymous people on the internet started telling him he had the testosterone of a 70-year-old and others recommending a dosing cycle of steroids. All of this because of a cargo cult approach to a number on a graph. This is illustrative of some quite deep hang-ups and anxieties in male-centric circles towards a single hormone of many that they've been told constitutes manliness. This isn't just a silly belief that some people are wrong about. This is an actively damaging approach. I sincerely hope that this guy didn't start taking steroids because his hormone levels briefly, on one test, fluctuated below a level that he found on Google. Personal anecdote, when I was 21, I was really worried about this sort of thing. I went in for a blood test, and the doctor told me that I had above average testosterone for someone me age, which was really cool. But then the doctor said, you know, a lot of people your age come in worrying about this stuff, and it's really quite silly. If you healthy, and you not experiencing any major problems, and your blood panel comes up fine for no other major disorders, then chances are whatever testosterone level you have is fine for you, and actively chasing a number that you found on the internet can be really damaging. If you take steroids, it can mess up your body's internal hormone production, and actually reduce the level of testosterone that your body makes. And really, all you're doing is enriching the supplement industry. Just out of interest right now, let's take a show of hands as to which is more likely to be true. That all four of these go, as a guys, has an unhealthily low testosterone level, even for someone several times their That's the study of hormones, by the way. What a lovely word. The meat, or should I say the plant protein, of Paul's video is situated entirely around the claim that soy is bad for you because it contains phytoestrogens. In other words, the thing we've already debunked in this video. But for a laugh, let's look at how he does it specifically. Soybeans contain high amounts of phytoestrogens, organic compounds that mimic the female hormone estrogen in the human body. This reduces testosterone and lowers male sperm count. Paul here is word for word quoting an article in Scientific American. Well, actually, it's a very short post on the blog section of the Scientific American website, and by word for word I mean it's average scientist and I on the for the you by higher period I should be sure to be really very very sure but we usually sure you Soybeans contain high amounts of phytoestrogens, organic compounds that mimic the female hormone estrogen in the human body. This reduces testosterone and lowers male sperm count. This bit is so, how do I put this? Not there. Paul made that bit up. The article actually said, and in animal studies, has been shown to reduce testosterone levels. Here we re-seeing the right-wing reactionaries' approach to a scientific process drawn into close focus. When reading a piece of information he is quoting as a source of truth in his video and finding that it's just a little bit too nuanced, he alters and rewords it to suit his own agenda. I see here we read back at the Kayla Daniels School of Science, where sheep and humans apparently have the same digestive system. I am fairly certain that the blog post here is referring to the studies on sheep we mentioned earlier. I don't know for certain. Because the blog doesn't cite a source for this claim because it's a rubbish on paragraph blog that only an idiot would source as definitive proof of anything. You might be thinking, oh, but the word testosterone is highlighted. Maybe if I click it, it'll link to the study showing it. It doesn't. It links to another article about testosterone. In fact, it links to an article from after this one was written. Someone went back and added the link to explain what testosterone is. Four years later, who's in charge of the blog section of Scientific American? You might even think, oh, what about that link to the human reproduction pep? Let's open that real quick. It appears to be an Oxford Journals or press release about some kind of journal, but it's a blank now. So, I mean, they retrying to cite sources. But, so, Paul's proof that phytoestrogen reduces testosterone is some tests on sheep from the 40s that he hasn't even read because the blog post he's using as a source doesn't even link to it, and being ignorant of the fact that there's been 32 studies of the effects of phytoestrogens on humans that found no connection whatsoever. Now, just as an aside, I think it's important to point out that animal studies aren't inherently useless. Animals can be good pointers for the effects of a substance on humans, and we can also perform tests on animals that it would be unethical to do on humans. However, when there are examples of human data, barring extenuating circumstances, the human data is probably more accurate. The 40s sheep study, or other studies on animals for that matter, should not be given as much consideration if they contradict the research we've done on humans. This article was published on July the 23rd, 2008, and we know, because I cleverly set this up by telling you earlier, that as of July the 1st, 2008, there were 32 studies into the effects of soy on human testosterone levels. This article brings up animal studies specifically because that's all they've got backing up their hypothesis that tofu lowers sperm count, apart from the study they about to reference, which we gonna get to in a second once we see how Paul sums it up. Men who eat half a serving of soy a day have 34 million fewer sperm per millimeter than those who don't. Wait, what was that? Sperm per millimeter. Sperm per millimeter. Millimeter. Okay, before we even get to the study, before we even get to the word is milliliter. Milliliter is a measurement of liquid, and a millimetry is a measurement of length. I don't even know how you got this wrong. The word is literally in front of Paul, you fucking journalist. It's such a simple thing to get right. And he can't even now, far be it from me to take Paul, or the one-paragraph blog post he cites entitled SOY at their word, but I'm gonna go ahead and actually check the sources they cite. Check out the link in the description. Sperm fans. The scientists got some men to provide a semen sample and answer a questionnaire about what foods they consumed, including foods that contained soy. They then sorted the samples into 4 groups: no soy intake and then varying tiers of soy intake, and looked to see if there was a correlation with the results of the sperm sample. The mean average sperm concentration in millions per milliliter was 106 for the group with no soy food servings, while the average for the group that had over 0.3 servings per day was 72, which does kind of show a correlation. Doesn't fit. However, you might notice a couple of weird things here. Firstly, the group that has between 0.1 and 0.7 servings per day had an average of 92, but the group with between 0.8 and 0.29, which is quite a bit more, had 104, more than the previous group, only slightly less than having none, and way more than having over 0.3. What's going on there? Something weird's going on with these men's sperm counts. On top of that, looking at the results section of the paper, the majority of men, 72, were defined as overweight or obese, whether or not they ate any soy, and 10 had below 20 million sperm per milliliter, which is less than the low bar for sperm the World Health Organization used to, up until the late 90s, consider a healthy sperm count. Why is this? Well, here's the part where I pull the chair out from under you. It's because the men invited to the test were the male partners of subfertile couples, couples who, for one reason or another, have been trying to produce a child but haven't been able to, who had gone to the Massachusetts General Hospital for evaluation. All the men in the study, whether or not they consumed soy, had already been having troubles achieving pregnancy. That's how they found them. By the way, the study's name mentions that it's men at an infertility clinic, right? And neither Paul's video nor the blog post he cites even mention that, and it's in its name. This is not a straightforward test of an average population. On top of that, how many men were actually tested in this study? 4,000. 1,000. 500. Well, it was actually 99 men. That's really not big enough for a study. That's really not big enough for the results of this study to be easily applicable to any human population. If you are going to count studies with a questionably low sample size, then you might as well look at the study by Song et al. In 2006, which studied only 48 men with a control group of 10 and found that plant phytoestrogen intake was correlated with higher sperm count and higher sperm DNA integrity. But 48 men, or even 99 men, isn't really enough for the results of either to suggest much of anything. I hope it goes without saying that a study of 99 men who were already having fertility problems is not enough to come to a sweeping generalization about the effects of soy on sperm count or testosterone, for that matter. And in case it doesn't to go without saying, this study concludes by saying it, and a quote, and studies say, tended to say go, they, go, say, Oh, 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 oh. Okay. The clinical significance of these findings remains to be determined. To be this finding well, this is term. This to be Owing to the scarcity of human data in this area, it is very important that this issue is examined further. This is Paul's source. This is the thing he uses to prove the things he believes. And even it says, fucking don't come to a bullshit conclusion. We don't know enough about it. And yet, it seems like Paul's audience lapped this up anyway, like milk from the udders of the world's most disgusting kind of metaphorical cow, the Lee cow. Here, another interesting thing I noticed. Despite his attempts to demonstrate that soy lowers testosterone and sperm count, the BuzzFeed Tree guys, incidentally, did a video where they have their sperm tested. All four tree go atrociously high K over count per milliliter despite having well below what Paul claims is normal testosterone. More than 10. Having selling coenless so Fairview, Milverson, Fairview, Theorem, Fairview, 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 This is anecdotal evidence, but that's really not much of a correlation between testosterone and sperm count, is it? Unless, of course, Paul means to tell me that Keith has well below the average testosterone levels of an 85 to 100-year-old man while blasting sperm like he's Zeus from Mount Olympus. There's also a bit where he attempts to tie the increased production of soy in the West with the general reduction in testosterone around the same time. Obviously, it's not the only factor, but consider this. In 1992, soy food sales in the U.S. stood at $300 million a year. They now stand at over $4 billion a year. This has coincided with a substantial drop in men's testosterone levels in the U.S. since the 80s. Hey, Paul. I'll give you this. I'll give you this one for free. Google the word coincidence. Seriously, this is the best he has to offer. The only other major things he cites are the guy I already showed you and the nutritionist whose book's name that guy got wrong. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that Paul and his audience is blindly following Kayla Daniels on this, given that the main source for her claims is a story about a bunch of fucking sheep. He even, and this is really interesting, cites as proof that men get man boobs because of soy the same video I found while I was doing research into this. You know, the one that cites no credible evidence whatsoever. Weird that he'd make that his source for his claims. What's even weirder, though, is that since Paul's video came out, the description of the video has been edited to read, note, Paul Joseph Watson used an excerpt from this video in his popular video The Truth About Soy Boys illegally without the permission of Dr. Kayla Daniel. She finds his perspective offensive. This is Paul Joseph Watson's bulletproof source, a nutritionist with little to no scientific basis for their claims whose video Paul took without even bothering to ask, to make his personal ridiculous right-wing view of the issue seem more credible. A view the person he's claiming as a source openly says she finds offensive. I hope Paul gets a fucking medal for how idiotic he's managed to be in this video. It's almost mind-boggling how backwards he's managed to get scientific reality. In conclusion, it may well be the case that soy is feminizing and makes you really unfit and isn't just caused by Paul's sedentary lifestyle or me love of Twizzlers, but if it is the case that soy makes you into no testosterone, no sperm baby man, then the time to believe that is when there is evidence. In the words of David Hume, and this makes me smarter because I can regurgitate a quote, the wise man proportions his belief to the evidence. Which brings me to the real question here. It's not just some people are wrong about the science of isoflavones or whatever. The real question is, why do right-wing idiots keep sharing obvious lies in order to perpetuate the things they want to believe? Why isn't the truth enough? The book, When Prophecy Fails, relates the findings of social psychologists who studied a doomsday cult that believed the apocalypse was coming. When the date of the end of the world came and went, many of the cult remained committed to its beliefs anyway, decided that the world had simply been spared or the end had merely been delayed. The psychologists found that when a group of people is utterly committed to an idea, even if undeniable proof it is not true is presented to them, they can find a way to remain steadfast in their initial false beliefs. The term cognitive dissonance was invented by Leon Festinger, the book's main author and lead psychologist, a year later. The small, close-knit, definitely not cult-like corners of the internet are sure they already know the truth about how the world works and appear to be hoping to piece together a justification for their beliefs by aggregating enough buzzwords that it somehow proves they were right. The only men who seriously watch BuzzFeed are infuriating male feminist, virtue-signaling, beta-orbiter soy boys. They re-virtue signalers. They re-cultural Marxists. They re-BTS. They must have low testosterone. They must be cucks. They must have had too much of a BN that's been a staple in the diet of Asian countries for thousands of years. I don't need to talk about evidence for me beliefs because everyone who isn't like me is all of these bad things, and that's why I'm right. It's important to recognize that this isn't an external claim. People don't wallpaper this all over their Facebook and Twitter feeds because they think it'll convince someone else to believe it. That's not the point. It's an internal claim. They repeatedly talking to themselves because they want to believe it. It's a mental diversion from the actual truth, which is that other people have different ideas than them because the evidence sometimes suggests their beliefs are wrong. Without spreading ideas like that SOY causes leftism, these folks would have to come to terms with the possibility that people might have good reasons to think differently from them, and admitting that would be too much. That would mean maybe they are not correct. Maybe their understanding of the world is incomplete. It can be scary to truly consider you might not know something and can be wrong. This explains the prevalence of people like Paul who help distract people from their fears of being wrong by acting as figures of authority who can tell them no. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about, and you rewrite already. You don't need to do any more thinking. Everyone who's different from you is a gender communist. Who's different from you a gender bermuda. If you happen to be a fan of Paul who managed to stick around to the end, thanks for hearing me out all the way. There's already undoubtedly tons of comments about stopping partway through because they can't stand the sound of me voice or because I am clearly a leftist Shiltsu boy. You've outsmarted all of those people by actually listening to what someone else has to say and really having to think about the evidence. It might be comfortable having a YouTuber affirming your ideas, but the truth can't hurt you. In fact, it can set you free. Having a greater understanding of the world can only ever be a good thing, and being able to change your conclusions when presented with new evidence is a far more important skill than happening to be right first time about something. I've been wrong about plenty of things. In one video, I claimed tigers were from Africa. They actually only live in India in the wild, and I foolishly half remembered an anecdote that their common ancestor with lions and leopards originated in Africa. Everyone is wrong some of the time, and that's okay. There'll always be people like Paul who want you to believe they can do your thinking for you, but maybe they're not right about that either. You don't have to think I'm right. I could be wrong. I could have come to the complete wrong conclusion about what this evidence suggests, but you can find it. It's out there, and it informs your perspective of everything. Maybe some conservatives eat soy and that's fine. In fact, that is the case. Ivy looked it up. And isn't it all nice? Go to the evidence and maybe together we can all live in a beautiful world, soy or not, and maybe we'll be gentler and nicer that way. And if you don't, well, I'll own you on the internet. Thanks for watching me really dumb rant in the woods. Here's some footage of me getting sausages thrown in me face. Okay, so it turns out that soy sausages are really hard to hit people with from a distance. Thanks for watching me really dumb rant in the woods. Here's some footage of me getting sausages thrown in me face. Okay, so it turns out that soy sausages are really hard to hit people with from a distance. Thanks for watching me really dumb rant in the woods. Here's some footage of me getting sausages thrown in me face. Thanks for watching me really dumb rant in the woods.